welcome back. I'm Mel from Women's Health and Wellbeing Services. I'm live streaming from home today, hence this little bit of fumbling around today, trying to get things right. Kind of don't feel like the lighting's right, but is the lighting ever right for any of us? I just don't know. So yes, I have been on leave for a couple of weeks. Kate and Janet have been doing some awesome live stream videos. Between the three of us, we are trying to get stuff to you guys out there to keep you connected, keep you feeling less isolated, get the conversations going, remind us that we're all in this together, essentially. If anyone is online right now and can hear me, that would be great if somebody could send me a little message in the little chat box down below, and that way I would know that I'm not just talking to myself here in cyberspace. It's lots of fun, I have to say, in amongst all this kind of craziness and confusion and chaos and anxiety that has been around for 2 to 3 months now. It's certainly, for us here at Women's Health and Wellbeing Services, really pushing us to get creative and really innovative in the way we do things. We're certainly changing things up by going more online and offering that to people, which makes it, I think, a lot more accessible and a lot more flexible in many ways. I love watching things online or reading things online. I don't always listen, but I might just read the subtitles. I love the flexibility that it offers and the choices that it offers when we can't always attend things in person. And, you know, I know many of us are extremely busy in the world right now. So, yeah. Wonder if anyone could just say hi. That would be really helpful, because I'm not kind of sure that anyone is reading me, but I guess that's kind of the challenge of going live. So what I was going to talk about today is money. I'm just going to see if someone can just see if they can send me a message. Hang on, I'm going to send someone a message and see if they can send me a message back. If you can hear me. Facebook. Sorry. Okay, so we're kind of having to do all these weird and wonderful things. Excuse my fumbling around. I feel a lot more fumbly today. Maybe it's just getting back into the swing of things in the work kind of frame of mind, but also doing things from home, adding the little intro video, that kind of stuff. Anyway, it's all fun and games, and it's all part of the journey and the learning curve. So how's everyone been going in the last couple of weeks, say? Have things settled down for you? Have they changed or improved or gotten worse? Are things clearer or more confusing? I know I'm still feeling a bit confused about things, certainly in relation to oh great, thanks Emma, looking good. Certainly in relation to schools going back, like not sure what's happening there. I know we've been told some things, but my sense is there's still a bit of confusion and uncertainty around that. Thank you for telling me I'm online. Yay, yep. So what I wanted to talk to you guys today about, as part of the new kind of the new way we're doing things here at Women's Health and Wellbeing Services, we are starting to offer some groups and programs online. Very cool. So there's a couple of groups that have been created that are now available on our website to purchase, and because it's a new thing and because we're all perhaps struggling a bit right now with income and with work uncertainty, we have halved the price of those groups, and we're really interested to see if people find them really useful. So one of those groups is called Making Sense of Money, which is what I'm going to be talking about today. So this is a group I chucked together. Didn't chuck it together, it took me a little while, to help people have a clearer understanding of their relationship with money. So the group isn't about budgeting or looking at finances or where to save money or shares or real estate, nothing like that. Believe me, I'm not the expert there by any means. I am a psychologist, and I am interested then obviously in human behavior and the human mind, and in that way I'm also interested in the way we relate to our money. I certainly know I've had my share of struggles with money. I think many of us have, but it's still one of those really big taboo subjects, kind of like sex, really. It's, you hardly ever talk about it. You never hear people talking about how much money they earn, how much they've got in savings, let alone if they're really struggling financially, unless things are really, really bad, and then kind of everyone knows and it's kind of too late to have sought any help along the way. So I created this group to help people have a clearer understanding of their behaviours around money, their beliefs around money, why they're acting the way they are with their money. Maybe you're a bit stuck in a unhelpful pattern with money and you kind of can see this and you're like, I know this isn't good for me. I know that I struggle week to week or whatever, or I know that I hold on to my money so tightly that I have trouble letting go of it, or I have trouble spending it, or I have trouble being kind to myself in that way with money. And it's very frustrating, I think, when we can see ourselves engaging in really unhelpful, slightly disordered behaviours and we can't stop it. That's why people, come and get help and come and see a therapist, for instance, because they might have some awareness that there's something kind of going wrong, but they don't quite know what to do. So the premise of the group then is understanding why you do things like you do with your money and with your finances, and what you can do about it to change things. So it's kind of going quite deep into that world, and you might never have sort of thought about essentially the psychology of money, your psychology of money and your relationship with money. So this group is about doing that. This program, it's a 4-part group. There's 4 different modules. And what I'm going to talk about today is just briefly about what is in each of those modules and how it might be able to be useful for you. The beauty, of course, of doing a group or a program online is that you can do it anywhere, anytime you want, kind of thing. So once you purchase the group from our website, you can now go on our website and there's one of the tabs you can click down, it says online groups, and you can click in there and then you can see the information about the groups that we have there for purchase. So once you buy them, they're yours. And then you can play them and pause them and go back to them and do all that kind of stuff for as long as you want, kind of thing. Which I really like, because you can do things at your own pace. There's kind of no deadlines. If you're coming to an actual physical group, which we kind of used to run, but they're slightly paused now and everything's kind of online and virtual. You have to be there at a certain day and a certain time, and sometimes that doesn't work for everyone, or just life gets in the way. There is, of course, a benefit to having something running regularly at the same day, at the same time, and for some people that works really well. So if you do want to do this group or any of our groups online, sometimes it's actually really helpful to carve out a bit of time for yourself. On a Tuesday at 11 a.m, that is my set time for myself. I'm going to block that out of my calendar like you would an appointment, and I'm going to dedicate myself to doing this group or this course or the study or whatever it is that you want, creative writing, whatever it is. But in this case, I'm talking about doing a group. This is the beauty of it, though. It kind of works for you. Whatever's going to work for you, go with that, of course. So I'm going to then talk a little bit more now about the contents of the Making Sense of Money course. So I'm just going to flip over. I'm going to be looking at my screen and just kind of reminding myself of some of the content of some of the modules. So there's 4 different modules to work through. So the first module is called The Meaning of Money for You. The second module is The Brain and the Body on money. The third one is Couples and Money, but it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be in a relationship. It's very, very applicable still if you're single. And it might also be helpful, to reflect back on what happened in previous relationships, or how you would like a future relationship to go financially. And the fourth and last module is about your values, conscious finances, mindful behaviors with money, and actually making some change. So, okay, let's start with, say we start with in the first module with looking at what is money. and it seems like such a kind of an obvious question. It kind of seems kind of stupid to go, well, what is money? But really, what is money? So I really get you to have a real think about how you define money, because certainly money in this day and age is very different to money even 10 years ago, 50 years ago, let alone hundreds and hundreds of years ago, what we used to use for an exchange of a service or a good. So we have a little look at that. Something that seems so obvious, but actually is really interesting, quite insightful. We have a look about wealth, what you consider wealth to be, and what you consider like a wealthy or a rich life to be. And on that notion, we have a little think about abundance and what your notion of money and abundance is. What does that look like for you? And a lot of this course is about getting really clear on how things look for you. What do you actually believe about money and your finances? And then what do you actually see with your money and finances? Because they're two different things. We like to think that our behaviors are in alignment with our beliefs and vice versa, but often they're not. And that's what can cause a lot of frustration and dysfunction, really, because we want to do something one way and we believe quite strongly in it. Oh, I'm going to do it this way and this is what I believe, and yet we find ourselves behaving in a different way. And that can get really messy and quite destructive, as you might have experienced in some of your areas of your life. For example, say you want to eat healthier, or you want to lose weight, or you want to gain weight, or you want to get stronger, or something like that. I love the metaphor of food and weight. It's so easy. So you might want to change something about your body and think, I'm really going to do this, and I have this plan and I'm going to stick to it, and yet your behaviors don't back that up. So you continue to eat in a way that doesn't help you shift the weight, or you don't do the exercises, or whatever. There's some sort of discord there between what you believe and what actually happens. So, and that is evident in many human behaviors, and kind of leads to change, or leads to at least some deep thinking. So hopefully in this course, it really gets you thinking and having a look at that difference perhaps between what you think about money and how you actually behave with your money. So so we have a little poke around first by looking at some of your thoughts around what money is and what wealth is. What does that actually look like for you? Is that defined by money in your life, or is it does wealth have different meanings for you, such as if I'm really loved, or I have really good friends and family, that makes me feel like I'm leading a rich life. Really interesting. So then we go on to have a little look at what we call money socialization. So that is how we're socialized around money. And what does that mean? That is, well, when we're children, we're all socialized into becoming adults. We're all kind of taught and trained in a way how to be a person, how to function in the adult world slowly over time. And we learn lots of things in childhood. And one of the things we learn, whether that's conscious or unconsciously, is we learn about money. We grow up in a family, and our family behaves a certain way with money. We might have one parent doing one thing and another parent doing another thing. We might see growing up that our parents fought a lot about money, or we saw bankruptcy in our family, or we saw a lot of stress and a lot of drama around money, or we might have actually had really good experience with money, never had to worry about money. It was just, or something like we never talked about money whatsoever. It was kind of this really taboo subject. And some people find that they grow up and they feel quite financially illiterate, we would say. So they actually don't understand their money at all. They might know, of course, that it comes in, you earn some money, or you get some money from the government, and then you spend money, and that's it. But nobody's really talked to you about how to be wise with your money and grow a really good, healthy relationship with your money. So that's really, really interesting, and obviously really important to always look at the origins of our behaviors. And look, typically they do start in childhood and with our families. So we have a little look around at that, and then we go into your relationship with your money. So this is what's happening in your current life right now. What's actually kind of going on there. And I talk about your relationship with money because it is, we have a relationship with everything in our life. So I'm not just talking about people, humans. We have relationships with our pets. We have relationships with our car. I'm not saying it's an actual relationship, of course, but there is some sort of exchange kind of going on there. And I think it's really helpful often to think of your relationship with money and what that looks like, because in a relationship there's a set of feelings that come along, and there's a set of behaviors that come along with us when we exist in a relationship with something. How do we relate to that person? How do I relate to that object? How do I relate to that animal? How do I relate to my job? How do I relate to my body? How do I relate to my hobbies? And of course, in any of those domains, there's a lot of feelings, how do I relate to my spiritual beliefs, with what I call God or whatever that is for you. And sometimes these relationships are fantastic. They're really smooth. They're really nurturing. They help grow us. They give us a sense of feeling loved and supported. Sometimes these relationships are very fraught. They're full of, some relationships might be full of shame or guilt. There might be a lot of anxiety. There might be a lot of frustration. Say you have a pet that just you love, but it drives you crazy kind of thing. You might feel that way around money. Excuse me. You might really love money, but it just drives you absolutely crazy kind of thing. I think we've all been there. So we start with that. We start with looking at how you would emotionally describe and define your relationship with money. Is it pretty good? Are you pretty happy? You're kind of like, yeah, we're buddy here. We're on the same wavelength. We trust each other. We're honest with each other. Or is it like we're really argumentative? We're never on the same page. I want more money and yet money won't give it to me kind of thing. So, is it a secure relationship that you have with money, or is it kind of an insecure relationship that you have with money? So, and a little bit further in that, I do get you to have a little think about, if money was a person, what would that look like? What would that person be like? What does money, is there a fair exchange between you and this thing that we call money? Is it freeing? Does money give you choice? Does money make you feel pretty content, or is there an ongoing struggle and drama around money? So that's why we look at the relationship, or the relationships that we have with money. And of course that may chop and change throughout our life as we earn more money, as we earn less money, as we have more demands and more responsibilities, or less, or we have emergencies. Many things come up there and change in our life. Yay, that's the beauty of life. We're on a roller coaster. We have a little think at, and I want you to perhaps have a think now about problems that may come up with money and how they may interfere with happiness. And we, in that way, in a little bit further on in the group, we have a look at your values and your values around money. Because if you place obviously a high value on money, and you believe quite strongly that money makes you happy, obviously that will change your behaviors. That will change how you get money, how much money you get, and what you do with your money, versus if you have some beliefs in a relationship with money which is much more problematic, and you have a belief system which is money is evil, money is greedy, money causes problems, and we can kind of see how that would change someone's behaviors if they had those set of beliefs. So we do look a bit further on in one of the modules, I'll talk about that in a sec, about different money types and different money personalities. I find it really interesting and really exciting. And I give you some links about where to go to kind of do this little quiz on yourself to find out what your money type is. Right, so that's what we look at just in module 1. It's quite a lot there, quite a lot for you to do, which is Fantastic. So module 2, we start looking at your brain and your body on money. So what does that mean? You know, brain and body on money. That is looking at kind of the biology of money. What happens in our brain, in the reward systems of our brain when we relate and interact with our money. So there's a bit of neuroscience that we chuck in there. I chucked in there. I think that's really helpful. I always think learning about our brain is really, really helpful, because often we feel like we're just doing things and we don't want to do things and it doesn't make any sense to us, particularly while we get stuck in particular cycles or patterns or even addictions. You can bet your bottom dollar there is some brain chemistry and pathways being activated there, particularly the reward system of the brain, that is reinforcing a behavior which we know is really not very good for us, but it just feels so good. So we have a look at a bit of the brain chemistry there and those pathways. I give you a bit of hope by reminding you that the brain, what we know now of the brain, is that it's quite plastic, so they call that neuroplasticity, nice big fancy word, which just means that even as adults we are more than capable of change and of learning new things, that the brain adapts and grows and changes throughout our lifetime. And there was a lot of research done on people who had brain injuries and stroke victims, not sure if victim is the right word, or people who had suffered from a stroke, and how the brain was able to, through training and a lot of physio kind of thing, to rewire and do things differently. Obviously, in that case, there might still be some deficits, but the research certainly found that you're more than capable of changing behaviours. It just takes time. You know, if you've been acting and behaving a certain way or engaging in a certain habit for a very long time, it takes quite some time to literally rewire those pathways in the brain, because it's like building a new road almost. Or I like to use the analogy of you walk in the bush and every day you go down that same path, and it's a well-worn path. You know, the bushes have sort of been squished aside. There's actually a path now because you've trampled on it so often. You know, so it makes sense that that's how our brains work with the neurons, the nerves in our brain, and the firing. It just goes, oh, we go that way, we go that way, we go that way. And when we try to change our behavior, initially, as you know, it's very, very hard because we just want to default back to that path in the bush. But we're now making a decision to create a new path. So we have to kind of rock up there with, you know, some big secateurs and a machete, and we've got to like fight our way through there. We've got to stomp through that bush every damn day. And it is challenging, and that is why change does take time. It takes consistency, it takes persistence, does take some self-discipline, and that's why change sort of goes up and down. It never goes, very, very rarely, I imagine, goes in a straight line. So in that regard, particularly when we're thinking about changing our money habits, it's really, or any habit, it's really, really important not to get too disheartened too early on, because these things take time. And that's just kind of logical, I think. If you think about, you know, I've been spending my money in a certain way for a decade, for 10 years of my life. Of course, it's going to take more than a month to change that, sorry to say, but it's absolutely possible because of what we know now about the brain and how flexible and plastic it is now, which I think is great. It gives us a lot of hope. It certainly gives me a lot of hope that all is not lost and we're not all doomed to our bad habits kind of thing. Okay, also in module 2, we look at our emotions. Huge, absolutely really big, you know, issue for all of us, our feelings and our emotions, but particularly in relation to money. Often it's very fraught, and there is high reactivity, emotional reactivity around money. You know, and for a lot of people who've really struggled with money and their behaviors, there may be a lot of shame and a lot of anxiety around money. There may also be a lot of fear around money. You know, and there's this kind of love-hate relationship going on, or a lot of anger. You know, you might really resent how money seems to control you and control your life. So we really kind of pull that apart. You know, a good example is to think when you get a bill, what is that? There's an ad on TV now and they talk about bill shock. It's kind of annoying, but actually it's really true. And I know I can relate to that as well. When you're ticking along quite fine, you're kind of, I don't know, things are kind of neatly balanced. And then this huge bill arrives, probably not in the mail, probably email or something happens to your pet. This happened to me recently, got this huge bill. And you're like, whew, that's kind of like a bit of a shock. So what happens for you when you get a big bill? Of course, almost all of us would be like, oh crap, you know, kind of thing, and that's normal. But does it really throw you? Do you panic, you know, or do you get really angry? Do you just go, no, this is wrong, I shouldn't be paying this? Or do you feel despair and think, oh my God, how on earth am I going to pay this? Do you just want to give up, you know? So instantly there we can see lots of emotions that come in with, say, an example like that when you get a big bill. But we also dig deeper, obviously, and look at our deeper feelings around money and how they've come to be. Hence, we looked in module one, our early socialization around money, the messages we received around money growing up. Because if we saw a lot of heightened emotion around money from our parents, we internalize that. And often people tend to go one of two ways. And this is not just around money. This is many behaviors in life with what we've grown up with. People either do the same thing. They're like, that kind of worked for me, or it's very familiar, so I'm going to parent the same way, or I'm going to eat the same way, or I'm going to spend my money the same way. Or they go completely the opposite way and they're like, my upbringing sucked and I want to do things completely differently, kind of thing. Very, very common to be one of those two. And in particularly in that one of I want to be completely different, there's a lot of emotion there and a lot of feelings that come along with that really strong desire to be different to our parents or the way we were raised. And I think that's really important to understand, because we don't all exist in a vacuum. We are products of our upbringing. It's kind of the way we were trained in life and how to live our lives, but that's not set in stone. And like I mentioned before with the brain and what we know about neuroplasticity, we can absolutely change our behaviors and change things that were very familiar to us. We can create new familiarities. So we also in module 2 look a little bit at goals and the concept that under a lot of goals in life are feelings. We may have a goal to one day own a house, you know, very, very common goal. Nothing wrong with that, of course. Or we may have a goal to travel. You know, I'm just trying to think of money kind of things here. And often underneath that goal or any kind of goal in life is actually a set of feelings. So say you want to buy a house, you actually may desire to feel very stable in your life or very secure. Of course, we all want that. Or you may want to have control over your where you live kind of thing and not be dependent on someone else, or not be kind of at the mercy of someone. If you rent, it's a horrible phrase, but it kind of feels like that sometimes. I know I feel like that sometimes. So with any kind of goal, there's these feelings underneath. So we really look at the link between goals and feelings, and this is applicable throughout all of your life and all the goals or not that you have, whether you kind of believe in goals or not. But that's a really, really interesting component of this course as well. We have a little look at, in terms of emotions as well, being able to regulate and manage your emotions, because if you're a person who really struggles to get a lid on your feelings and you're quite reactive to certain things, of course that will often spill out into your money behaviors. And you may be one of those people who does retail therapy when they're really upset, or I just want a reward and I'm going to go and spend some money. There might be some things around that, so we tease that out as well. And then we continue to look at beliefs. We look at the linking of your beliefs, your thoughts, and your feelings around money and how they pop out in behaviors. So, and also in module 2, we look at what we call money scripts. So that's kind of those money personalities I just mentioned a few minutes ago. There's a little quiz that you can do and see which one you fit into. There's kind of a few different theories on that, but I've just found a really quick and easy little quiz that gives you an idea of, say, your money personality, your tendency. Like I said, you might be someone who really, really values money, and you believe that money is really important to your happiness, or you might be someone who has a really negative belief about money. You might be someone who's really vigilant around money or really avoidant around money. I'm just looking at some of the types here. And that is really important, I think, to understand about yourself. You probably already know some of this stuff, but the way we talk about it in the group is kind of more conceptualized into actual categories. And that can just kind of help inform you, and you go, oh, that's kind of why I do that, because I have these beliefs and thoughts about money which are driven by a bunch of feelings, which actually started way back here when my parents ran out of money and we went bankrupt and we were kicked out of home. You know, and if that happened to you at 5, that probably set something in your mind that might not, but may contribute to the way you are today with money. And of course that may be fine or it may not be fine. May be working for you, it might not be working for you. So we kind of weave all that together in module 2. Then we get to module 3, which is couples and money. And like I said, you do not have to be in a relationship to do this module at all, just as applicable if you're single, because you've probably heard this before, but the number one thing couples fight about is money, particularly if you have very different you and your partner have very different ways of spending your money. You have very different beliefs about your money that can be very problematic. There's also problems, if there's problems around communication with your money, that can also be quite problematic as well. If no one's having conversations, or if the conversations you are having with your partner are basically arguments, that's not helpful at all. So in module 3, we start out by looking at a few interesting concepts around, the first one is what we call financial infidelity, and the second one is sexually transmitted debt. So financial infidelity is when there is a level of deception going on around money in your relationship. Either you or your partner aren't being fully honest about what you're earning or what you're not earning or what you're spending. We look at how that can be problematic in a relationship. Obviously, any form of dishonesty and deception in a relationship can be highly corrosive to that relationship, particularly if there might be something like a gambling habit or a gambling addiction in the relationship, and that can be one of the worst, really, really difficult addiction, I think, to struggle with generally, and particularly in a relationship. It can be very, very destructive. So we have a little look at that, financial infidelity, the feelings associated with that, what to do about that. We also then look at sexually transmitted debt, such a cool name. So this is when you enter into a relationship and either you or your partner is carrying with them a heap of debt that they've accrued before they met you, and how that is impacting on you or not, kind of thing, and what to do about that. We have a little look too about financial abuse. So financial abuse is or economic abuse, it sometimes is called. This is a form of domestic violence. So you may or may not be aware that domestic violence or intimate partner violence is not just about physical violence. It's not just about physical assaults. There are many different types of abuse and violence in a relationship: emotional, psychological, and economic, of course. So we have a little look at that and what that is. So just briefly, that is when a person's finances are controlled by another person in the relationship, and they're heavily restricted on what they're able to do, what they're able to earn, what they're able to spend. Obviously that is a major red flag, and you would need to seek some immediate help for that kind of controlling behavior. In this module, we also look at how do we get to a place of financial intimacy. We look at how a couple, or how you can do that with yourself, get intimate with yourself around your money, how you can do that together or by yourself kind of thing. And of course, to do that, you've got to start having conversations about money, and you need to be having conversations about money pretty regularly. You need to literally lay your cards on the table. So we talk about how to do that. I borrow some of the content from Scott Pape's book, The Barefoot Investor, around setting a money date for yourself or for you and your partner. Once a week, once a fortnight, or once a month, whatever kind of works for you. We have a little look about that. We have a look at some interesting information about couples and finances in the relationship, and how money can be a bit of a gridlock in a relationship. I get you to fill out a little quiz on that. Often conflict in a relationship that looks like that it's about money, it's actually not about money. As it is with many human behaviors, it looks like that's the problem. So with children's behaviors, it looks like, oh, they're just being really cheeky and naughty and defiant. But underneath that, there are some unmet emotional needs going on there. And we need to kind of fix that. We need to kind of work with the emotions and develop a secure relationship with that child. And also, in this case, we need to develop a secure relationship with our money. We need to develop a secure relationship with our partner. And included in that is how we operate our money together. Really, really important, particularly if you want to save your relationship. Because like I said, money can be the cause of so much conflict in relationships, particularly if you have different beliefs about money. And of course, following on from that is different behaviors around money. So yeah, there's some little exercises you can do on that, around looking at your relationship with money with your partner. We then talk a little bit about conflict resolution around money in your relationship, how to work with that, how to get to the bottom of some things, give you some tips and strategies on sort of fighting fairly, but they're more, constructive conversations around money in your relationship. And of course, if that's a continuing problem, it's probably masking some underlying problems going on in the relationship. And of course, you would need to seek some further support or advice or counselling around that. So that's module 3. And finally, there's module 4. I hope I'm not giving too much away, but it's such a cool course. Honestly, I really hope that this piques your interest and you want to have a little dive into it. So the 4th module of Making Sense of Money is about mindfulness, values, gratitude, and reducing harm associated with difficult, problematic financial behaviors. So we talk about mindful money behaviors. So, mindfulness is just huge right now, and so it should be. It's a very, very important, behavior to engage in on a daily basis. The more we're able to be mindful of ourselves, mindful of the world around us, the more present we are. Mindfulness is about being truly present in the moment as it's unfolding now. It is about being kind of in a state of flow, particularly without judgment. So when we're being very mindful, or when we say practicing a mindfulness exercise on ourselves, we're just kind of watching our thoughts. We're watching our feelings. We may be just tuning into our body, and we're not trying to change anything. It's a very non-judgmental space to be in when we're being very mindful or practicing a mindfulness exercise. So when we can take mindfulness into our relationship with our money, we open our eyes. We are willing to be more conscious, more aware, more honest with ourselves, with our money. We're then choosing to act with integrity with our money, even if it is very, very difficult. And I know for many people, it is very hard to literally sit down, pull out all your bank account statements, which are usually just on your phone, to look at what money is coming in, what money is coming out, where are you spending your money, how much am I paying on this insurance and that bill, and da, 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 da. A lot of people avoid that, because it is so overwhelming and frightening, and we're like, it's just too hard basket. So when we become more mindful of with money, we choose to kind of get our heads out of the sand and kind of grow up a little bit around money and act a bit more maturely, even though it might be quite difficult and emotionally challenging to do, particularly with our partners if things have not been going well for a while in that situation. So it requires you to act a lot more consciously, and I would say more kindly with yourself. There is no point, there's no benefit whatsoever to being really harsh and critical with yourself around the way you have been spending your money. It all, in a funny kind of way, it all makes sense. It's only if it becomes very problematic and we need to change them that it's a problem, kind of thing. Yeah, I'm not sure if that's making sense. So in module 4, we have a look a bit about how to be more mindful with our money, how to be more conscious and aware. Are we using money issues and problems to distract ourselves from other issues going on in our lives? And that can certainly happen in a couple relationship as well. If there's a lot of money problems, they may, like I mentioned, they may be covering some other issues that are going on in the relationship. On that notion of mindfulness, I really encourage you to try to have a daily or a weekly practice of mindfulness. We have a little explore about what mindfulness is, and then we go into looking at values. And values are so important. I think values are really missed in the conversations that we have these days unless you consciously look at them. So we all have values. Often though, we don't actually sit down and write them out, or don't actually really look at them clearly. We might, I really value my friends. We might go, I really value having a close relationship with my parents, or I might really value my work, and it's only often when we sit down and really pull them apart, we can see where there's some holes in our lives, and we can see where there's a mismatch. In the same way that I was talking about that mismatch sometimes between our beliefs and our behaviors, often in life, when we're coming up against a lot of problems, what may be happening, just one consideration, of course, amongst many, what may be happening is this kind of mismatch between what we value and, again, what we're actually doing. See, I believe that everything in life comes down to actions. It's what we see another person doing that is speaking more loudly than what they're saying. Actions speak louder than words, and that is really so true, particularly with money. That's kind of never more true really than how that shows up with money. So we have a little look at your values, and if your values are lining up with how you are going with your money and your money behaviors, what's coming in and what's coming out. Values, of course, are what is deeply important to you, what you literally value in your life. So we have a look at the different domains in your life, friends, work, family, health, leisure, that kind of stuff, spiritual stuff. And you can do a little worksheet on that as well in that module, and then see if your money is or your monetary behaviors moving you closer to what you value in life or moving you further away. And like I mentioned, values very much come down to action. And if we're out of alignment with what we value, we're not going to be feeling too good in our lives, and we're probably going to see some other problematic behaviors show up in our lives. So then in this last module 4, we look at gratitude. I know this is another biggie that's around these days, and sometimes it's a bit of an eye roll. Oh, here we go. What am I grateful for? And certainly know my teenage son is a bit like that. Oh, don't make me think about 3 things I'm grateful for today. Understandable. I think though, being grateful is so important. If you live where I live in Australia, just living in this country, you have a lot to be grateful for. We look at how practicing gratitude more often and more consciously can help us with our money behaviors, but help us with our beliefs around money. and around gaining a sense of abundance in our life that isn't attached to money and objects. I know we live in a capitalist society. We have to have money to live. We really do. We cannot survive without money. It's not the be all and end all though, even though it kind of feels that way sometimes. So we have a little look at that. We pull that apart about having a think about what you're really truly grateful for in your life. Where in your life is abundance showing up that's not related and connected to money? We have a little think about, the difference between collecting objects, I'm going to say, and collecting memories. And one of those is more important than the other. I'll let you have a little think about that and what you value more in your life. So I get you to think about those. And then we end by thinking about what I call financial harm minimization. So harm minimization is a concept that came out of the drug and alcohol field regarding people's choices. So all humans, most people, have a choice in how they behave. And if we're talking about drugs and alcohol, some people choose to continue using drugs and alcohol. That's in a very destructive way for them. It can cause a lot of harm physically or emotionally, or in their relationships in their life, financially, of course. So harm minimization is accepting that somebody is still choosing to engage in a behavior which is probably not good for them. How can we just reduce that harm until they get to a place where they're able to change, they're willing to change their behaviors? So that's all it is. So I think financial harm minimization is really important in that regard, because I mentioned before, change takes a long time sometimes, and it can be difficult, and we can go backwards and forwards and up and down, and we want to chuck in the towel. But really, we need to just keep going. We need to kind of push through that. So we look at how to sort of get into a space of damage control with our money. So if you're still struggling with some destructive money behaviors and still spending like there's no tomorrow, that's an example, then it might be difficult now because we're all stuck at home, but you might still be spending a lot online. Damn you, online shopping, damn you. Very handy, but very tricky sometimes. We look at just how to sort of reduce the harm around that. So some, basic stuff around putting limits around what you spend, or if you're going to the shops, not taking your card with you and not take, so little things like that to just help you manage some of your behaviors if they're still being quite problematic and quite tricky. We look at some little tips around that. Classic one would be, of course, not doing some retail therapy when you're really angry or when you're really upset about something, in the same way they advise you not to go grocery shopping when you're really hungry, because you just buy all this stuff you don't need. Not that I've been there, of course I haven't been there, but anyway, it's a very similar thing. We also then look at recovery, really, and how to get to a place of healing and recovery with difficult money behaviors, looking at some of the steps involved in that, which, starts with being just brave. You've just got to be brave to change our behavior. I often would say to clients who would come into our service for counseling, how courageous that is to take a step through that door, being willing to open up yourself to a complete stranger, to feel that vulnerable, to feel that scared. That takes real courage and bravery. And it's the same with any behavior that we want to change in our lives, that we have to step outside of our comfort zone. And because if our comfort zone has become so uncomfortable that we're bursting out of it, we have to find that within ourselves to be super brave and step out into a difficult place, which requires us to be more willing to look at ourselves under the microscope. Not always easy, often quite difficult and painful, but almost always worth it. And that's kind of where we end the module, the fourth module, and the entire money group. Essentially, the group is about helping you create change in your life. around your money behaviors, by rejigging your relationship with money. That's all it is. It's as little as that, and it's as big as that kind of thing, because that is quite a big thing, particularly like if I said that you have been operating, shall we say, in a certain way for quite a long time in your life. It can take time, as I've said, to change. So that is a little taster of one of the first groups that we've now put online for people to purchase and tick along at their own pace through those 4 modules available on our website now for a discount price. I feel like I'm selling some sort of steak knives or something like that. But anyway, it's really awesome. And I think it's really great that we can provide a bit more flexibility and some more options to people to do things from home, particularly right now where we're all a lot more homebound. And if you're, stuck at the house with kids and your partner and stuff like that, it is, it is tricky to do something for yourself. So if you're able to still find something and tick along at it at your own pace, like the beauty of an online course or group program offers you, great, kind of thing. Not that we all have to pop out of this pandemic with having learned a new language or a new skill or some crazy stuff like that. I was reading some stuff like that, and boy, does that set people up for some high expectations that frankly not many of us are going to meet. But there's offering some interesting opportunities for innovation and change, I think. So next live stream, I'm going to be talking about one of the next group that we've put online on our website, and that is about self-compassion. So I ran this group last year in 2019. It was a lovely, lovely group, and so I've now converted that to a 5-module online group that you can purchase and tick along at your own pace. So what I'm going to do the next live stream next Wednesday at 2 o'clock, which will be the 29th of April. Wow. I'll be giving you another little taster of that course, just like what I've done today. I'll be sort of breaking it down a little bit and giving you a little snippet of what we cover in there, and how being self-compassionate can change your life. It really, really can. And actually, I'm just thinking now, there is such a connection between money and self-compassion, and how if we're very critical and harsh on ourselves with our money and the way we behave with our money, I think that can lead to more problematic behaviors with money. But if we're kind and compassionate towards ourselves and our difficulties and struggles that we may have in the domain of money and our finances, we're more willing, I think, to change when we're kinder to ourselves, in the same way that you wouldn't, berate or be really critical to a friend or a child, hopefully not your partner. We shouldn't, but I loathe that word. It's not ideal to do that to ourselves, because it doesn't actually ever really create change. And the answer is no, not really. Not the kind of change that we really want. So they're actually quite connected, money and self-compassion, but self-compassion obviously filters out into absolutely every corner of our lives. So I'm going to be talking about that next week in the live stream. And in between, I'm pretty sure Janet and Kate are going to be popping up and doing some more live streams, and we will be continuing to offer you some interesting endeavors, interesting adventures out there into cyberspace, for the way that we still trying to connect to everyone, all of our beautiful, wonderful clients. And we so value you guys, so we're so hopeful that this is helping all of us to stay connected and feeling less isolated, and that we're still all on board and we're still working through this together, and there's still many, many options out there to keep doing some cool stuff for yourself in your life. So on that note of me just rabbiting on and on, I'm going to sign off now, and thank you so much for having a little watch and listen. I hope it has piqued your interest into considering doing the little money group online. And I will see you in a week. Have a good week.